So your cube is going to look like this. And the way that we are going to create it is each side is going to be created using a separate class. And we do have some nesting of elements in the HTML. So we are going to be using the preserve 3D. So you can see how that is used as well. And all of the code that you need to add is right in here. All right. I've also included a separate PDF for people who would prefer to print that out. But I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to key this in, and then we will take a look at it live. So here I've got cube.html. I did save it into the lesson 9 folder. And so you can see for the body, we've set up some margins, basically top and bottom. We've adjusted. Left and right are still 0. And the way you read this, it's clockwise, starting at the top, right, bottom, left. So actually it's the top and the left that have margins. The right and the bottom are set to 0. Then for our container, we did set perspective to 500. Perspective is used to give a 3D object depth. And I do have an interactive example that you can pull up. It is connected to the lecture notes. I created this. And it lets you kind of adjust. So you can see the difference when you change perspective. And so here's a smaller value versus a larger value. And when I always think of perspective, you know, because in photography, it's more something like this. You know, looking in the distance, it appears that something gets smaller like this. So the end is larger. The end point here is smaller. That's how I always view perspective. But when you're dealing with 3D animation, it is basically what gives the object some depth. So we're creating a cube. We do want it to have some depth. So we have set this to 500. You'll notice that we've got the preserve 3D style for the ID, the cube. And you'll notice we have a lot of IDs here. And then we've got classes. So we have a container ID, that's where we're getting our perspective set. We have the cube, which is saying preserve 3D. So you know that we are going to be using that in nested elements. And then we've got the cube div. Okay, so this would be the cube ID applied to a div element. And that's actually what's creating the side of the box. Okay, so we've got a height and a width. We're saying the position is going to be absolute. We've got kind of a light blue color with a black border, making the font size a little larger than normal. And if it's multiple lines, we've got a line height specified, and we're going to center align our text basically. Then we get into the front, back, right, left, top, and bottom. These are each side of the cube. And you can see that we are using transform, and we are basically rotating it and moving it. So we're rotating either the X or the Y, and then we're using translate Z to move it. And Z is what's giving us that 3D effect. Gives us more of an angle. Okay, for the front, we don't need to really rotate that at all. We just have to move it. Okay, then we've got our container. Okay, so if you come and look, that's where we're setting our perspective. And then inside the container, we have the ID of the cube. So if we come up and look, that's where we've got preserve 3D, and that is needed because we have each of these sides inside, or div tags inside existing div tags. That's why we had to preserve the 3D. And then for each of the classes, all we're doing is displaying the text indicating the side. All of the work is being done in the class itself. That's where it's rotating the side and it's positioning it using Z. So you might think, how in the world did you figure out where to position all of these sides? It was completely trial and error. So you want to make sure that you have these settings correct. Otherwise, your cube isn't going to look very much like a cube. Okay, so that's all there is to the HTML. So let's take a look at our cube online. And that is what it should look like. Okay, and you'll notice that we do have some transparency, obviously, on the background color, or we would not be able to see the different sides. Now, if yours does not look like this, what you need to do is look for typos. And the typos would typically be in this area here, probably on your translate Z. So check those values. They should all be 75. So if you miskeyed one of them, that would mess up how this looked. Also kind of check your rotate X, because if you didn't rotate correctly, that would also make the cube distorted looking. So at this point, we are done with the cube. You can close it. We're done with the matrix. Still going to be working on famous quotes. So you want to keep that one open.